difference for anything else. So we're recording at this point. Again, we're just going to do a deep dive into Teams today. I'm not going to mute anyone. So if you have questions, please go ahead and ask as we go, and we'll just kind of go from there. So that said, I have my Teams screen up right now. I'm going to go over kind of like the screen and then just go into each and every part of it as we go. So Teams itself is just a different way of communicating. You can send work, you can work on documents, you can work on projects, you can do a lot of things with Teams, a lot of which we used to be able to do with Outlook. So it's just a different way of communicating, essentially. So left-hand side of the screen is where I am going to start today, and I am going to start with the activity icon over here. Those are all of the notifications that are coming to you. So depending on how you've been using Teams, you may have noticed that you're not getting notified on other devices or maybe your Apple Watch or whatever when conversations or chats happen. If that's the case, you're getting your notifications to your desktop. That's by default. That's how Microsoft designed it to work. In order to get notifications to your other devices, you have to have closed out of your desktop app to have that happen. So just so you're aware, if you're not getting them to your Apple Watch or whatever, and you still have the desktop app up, that's why. Next thing down that list is chat. Have you guys used the chat features yet?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay. So the chat really is a chat with people or groups, and not everybody sees those. So the conversations that you see in your channels are completely separate from chats. Chats really are just chats. So everyone in Teams, again, sees what's in the conversations, but the chat itself, you can chat specifically with someone. So for instance, if I wanted to chat with somebody, like there's something that Dave sent me the other day, but if I wanted to chat with Connor, I could send him a new message inside of here. Nobody else would see it except for Connor. Now, I could add somebody in after the fact. So if I was speaking with Connor, send him a chat, and then I wanted to add Dave into it afterwards, Dave would not see what I sent Connor previously, but he would see everything from there forward in that chat. Does that make sense?
So when you type in, you can just pull them from the contact list. You don't just type their name. Is that correct? Or am I missing?
So what I would do, like if I wanted to, like they're in my contact list, but if I wanted to send something specifically to somebody, yes, I
Right.
could just do their
Go on your.
name. Exactly. So I could send
Okay.
in, information to Connor like this, but if I wanted to add somebody else into this chat, I would just type in their @ symbol and start typing their name,
Okay.
and that would add them in as we go. Or you can add them in up here on the side where it says add people. So you can add them in that way too.
Sounds
Other
good.
things, yeah, other things that you can do from this window, there's 3 icons up here. So if I wanted to video call somebody, if we're in the middle of a chat and I really just wanted to call them, I could video call them. I can also do a regular audio call. Now, the audio call is within your organization only, just FYI. And then the other thing that you can do is share your screen. So if you guys are like chit-chatting between something and you just not really understanding, you can say, you know what, let me show you my screen. You click that, your screen comes up, and then you can show them on your screen exactly what you're talking about. So when you're not in the office and you're, having that trouble of that disconnect of I don't understand what you're talking about, you can just simply share your screen with somebody and away you go. So there's your chats. Next thing we want to take a look at are the actual teams. Your team lists are going to come up inside of there. Now I have a bunch hidden at the moment. You can have as many teams as you want. It's just going to list them over here on the side for you. However you want to do that is fine. Your calendar really is your calendar. This does link back to Outlook, so all of your appointments and meetings and things will be shown on there for you. You can also make calls from Teams. You can use your headsets or earbuds or your mic in your laptop or whatever the case is, but you're good to go. And again, calls are on your internal team only. You can't use them from the outside world. Calls, same thing. You can make calls. Files are all the files that you have available to you. You'll see them in a list inside of there. Applications down here on the bottom, you can tie in applications back into Teams. There's a handy dandy list here of all the things that you can pick from. I went over this last time, so I'm not going to hit on these today. Now, across the top, there is a search bar up here. You can search for all kinds of things, right? Because we were talking about this the last time. Let's say I do want to search for that. That's a term I want to search for. It's going to take a look through all of our chats that we've had and all of the messages. And the other thing I forgot to mention is that there are some Office 365 issues going on right now. Do not let me leave here without telling you exactly what those are, because they may affect some of the things that you do. So I'm going to circle back around to that in a little while, but you can search for things. You will see them in messages. If you have somebody actually called toilet paper, they would be in your people, hopefully not. If you have files associated with that, it would search for those as well. But pretty much anything that you type up here, it's going to search through your messages, your people, and your files to hunt for a match. Other things that you can do with that, if you type in the /, it will give you options and commands that you have available to you. So if I want to see if I can set my status to away just by clicking /, typing the word away, it'll just reset my status to that. I can join teams doing that. I can do all kinds of really cool stuff. So that's available for you. You don't have to remember it. Just type in that / and it'll give you a list. Same thing with the @ command. All you have to do is type in the @ command. It gives you a list of all the things that you have available to you. If somebody's done a really nice job, you can praise them directly from here. So I can say @David Sizer or @praise. I can give them praise that way. I know Dave's over here like, please, you should probably do that. So, so I can send praise to people. Who do I want to send it to? Do that.
There's so much I could say.
I know, right? And just start
Sorry,
typing
Dave.
in their in their information, and I can start giving them praise for things that they've done. So there's that. You'll notice this might be different from your team over here. You may or may not have anything next to your name. Right now, I have my company's name there. Because someone else has added me to their team, I see theirs as well, and you'll see that I'm added to the channel company as a guest of their teams. So if you want to add in external people into your team, you can do that. When you create a team, you can simply add them in by their email address, and we'll hit this again a little bit later. When that happens, if they log out of Teams and log back in, they will then be able to accept your invitation, and you'll see that as a drop down up here at the top. Your name, you have some settings in here that you can set. Some of these are kind of fun. If you don't like the way that Teams look, if you go into settings, you can adjust whether it's dark, high contrast. You can make it look a little bit different. Other things that you can do, you can adjust your notifications for things. So if anytime somebody mentions me personally, do I want them by banner? Do I want an email to show up? Do I only want to show it in the feed? Do I not want to be bothered at all? I can change that however I want them to show up. So your mentions, your messages, any of the team membership changes, you can adjust how you are notified on all of this. So if you constantly feel that you're getting way too many notifications and it bings, 30 times an hour, which it has been doing for us, you may want to adjust those. Other things that you can do, your devices are in here. So if you need to make any adjustments, there you can see me, hi. Your permissions are in here, as well as calls. Now, again, we talked about calls very briefly. You do not get voicemail. This is something that is on a different plan for Teams. But what you can do is if you are making calls inside of your Teams, you can change your ringtone to make it sound different, especially when you have more than one person that's accepting calls inside of Teams in the same room, like Dave and I have. We changed our ringtone so I can tell his from mine. So those are a couple of the settings that you have available to you if you want to adjust those. And of course, the minimize, maximize, and close button there at the top. So there's that. Any questions on the screen before I start diving into the team itself?
Nope.
All right, awesome. So with your teams, the team itself is a group of people with some purpose in common. It can be that you're all members of a department. It can be that you're all at the same location. Maybe whatever the team is, it revolves around a client. Maybe it revolves around a project, but whatever it is, it's a team of people working for a common purpose. And again, you can include outside people. You just have to invite them. To do that, click on here. You want to add a member, you can add a member. I can start typing their name. So if I wanted to add in, let's see, I'm going to pick on Dan. I would simply add him in. It asks, do I want to add him as a guest? Yes, I do. I'm going to click add. It's going to swirl here for just a minute until it figures out what's going on. He will then get a notification that says he's been added as a guest via email. And then when he logs out of Teams, logs back in, he will then have this little pull down at the top up here. He will see third element as a guest option, and then he can join in the training team as a guest. So that's how that works. When you create a team, they can be either public or private. I know I worked with a couple of you guys with this. Most of the ones that we set up were all private because you were specifying exactly who was going to be a part of that team and didn't necessarily need to have other people hop into that team at any point in time. But you can create public or private, however you want to do that. If it is a private team, only the people that are a part of that team even see the team. If it is a public team, everybody inside of the company can see the team and request to join it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So inside of any team, you're going to see a couple of channels. Right now I have the general channel. That's what gets created by default. I have one in here called a connector for Bing, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. And I have another one for questions inside of there. Those particular channels are any topics of discussion inside of that work team. You can create as many channels for discussion in your work team as makes sense for you. So whether you have 1 or 30, it doesn't really matter. A couple of things that you can do inside of here. These are your conversations. You can simply type in information for your conversation. You can type the @ sign to mention someone specifically. So again, if I wanted to pick on Dave, I could, type a message specific to him. So his name comes up. I tag him in. I send the message. He gets a notification and it bings on his computer. That way, he knows that he's gotten some type of information into that particular channel. Now, if I want to get fancy about it, this little guy here allows you to format your message, but it also gives you a subject line, which is kind of nice. Occasionally, you're going to have some information, and that information is going to tie back to a project or a subject, or maybe something specific that you're working on, and it's just easier to see if it has a subject line. So I'm just going to put a test subject in here so you can see what that looks like. That's the Convo part of it. A couple other things that I want you to be aware of. You can post in multiple channels. So if you have multiple places where whatever information that you're putting into this conversation would make sense, you can click that. You can select whatever channel it is. That brings up all of my channels so I can put in whatever I want in there. I'm just going to keep it to the general and the training for right now, but just so you know that that's available for you. Other things that you can do inside of here, you can attach things to it. There are emojis available to you. Again, if you want to get fancy, there are GIFs that you can put in here. There's all kinds of fun stuff. Who doesn't want a sheep or a goat or whatever that is? We'll give them one of those because that's fun. And then I can send that particular thing in my channel. There we go. But now we see my goat. We see the subject. It's a little bit larger. Whatever information that you're putting in there, and then you have that available to you. A couple other nifty things that you can do. There's Noah, he has popped in. You can create a meeting inside of here. So if you want to meet with any members of your team or multiple members of your team, again, don't necessarily need to see me, but schedule a meeting. You can either meet now by clicking meet now or schedule a meeting. This will give you additional options, so you can add the title of your meeting. Whoever is required to show up, just start typing in their names, put them in there. Your date, your time, maybe it's an all-day meeting, God, I hope not. Whether it repeats or not, what channel it's going to take place in, if there's a location, because it's in Teams, I'm guessing not, and then any details for the meeting. So anybody that you require as an attendee, the same way that you would do in Outlook, they would get some information saying, hey, you've been invited to this meeting, it's at this time, blah, 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 blah. They can then click on it directly from inside of there. You guys use the scheduling assistant inside of Outlook to pick times that everybody has available?
Yeah.
Yeah. So scheduling assistant is still here. It's still linked into Outlook, so you can use that too. So still there, no problem. Once you have all of that configured, just click send. And again, it works just like a regular Outlook meeting. They get a link, same way, it emails them, and it's also inside of that channel. All right, so that's how meetings work. Other things that we can talk about here, you can do connectors. So I did put a connector for Bing in here earlier. You're like, that's nice. What does that even mean? So what I did, inside of any channel, you can create a connector. That connector connects things. In this case, we can bring in specific news. We can bring in forms if you have a form. When you guys are using Yammer, think of Yammer as like Facebook for companies. So that's available for you as well if you want to connect things in. The biggest thing right now we're going to talk about is this news connector. So if I configure that, it's going to ask me what do I want to name it? Well, I'm going to name it test for right now. I can select my topic. Well, what's a big topic right now? That's a topic. Everybody wants to talk about that. I can then choose that. If there are additional topics, I can put that in. I can tell it when do I want my digest delivered. In this case, I already have one set up for 11:30. That's that connector for Bing that we saw earlier. So I'm not actually going to save this one, but that's what I have set up. So every day at 11:30, this connector inside of my training thing is going to pull in Bing News that surrounds COVID-19. It's also going to bring in topics from work from home. So that's what's going to populate inside of here. So if that works, we'll see that at 11:30. So important things for you guys, if you are referencing a specific project, maybe the Sheets thing, if you wanted to have Sheets specific news that were turning up locally, if you specified exactly what you were looking for, it would actually go down through and search through the news and bring that into your channel for you. All right, other cool things that we can do inside of here. Every single one of these channels has this little dot, dot, dot. Anytime you see dot, dot, dot with Microsoft, that gives you additional information. So you can turn your channel notifications on or off. You can pin things, which means they're available all the time. You can adjust how you interact with the channel by managing it if you have the ability to do so. And that's usually if you have created the channel, usually the person that creates the team or the channel is the only one that can manage it. But the other two inside of here are kind of interesting. One of them is get email address. This actually gives you basically a link to be able to email this particular channel. What does that mean? Well, getting the email address, let's do that. It gives me a link to this particular thing. I can then copy that. And then if I'm sending something to the outside world and they're not a part of my team, but maybe I'm sending a document out to a contractor, and I want everybody that's in this particular team or this particular channel to know, one, that I've sent the email, but also what I've sent. If I make that link CC'd on that email, it'll actually take that email and dump it into my channel as a copy of the email. So everybody knows exactly what went out, what document may have been attached to it. Maybe it didn't have a document attached to it, but it gives you the full email inside of that channel. That's what that does. The other thing that you can do is get a link to the channel. So if you need a link to this particular channel, you can copy it and send it to somebody as well. So that's what those do. All right. Tabs across the top. You guys are semi-familiar with those because I know we used Planner previously to put tabs in. So the tabs in the team allow you to work, one, with any of the posts, that's your conversations. It allows you to work with files. So any files that you have available for you, I'm gonna pop back over here to my general because I put one in there. I have an article in here that I'm using right now. Any of the files that you want to have available for other members of your team, you can dump into any of the channels inside of their files. This actually creates a SharePoint site for those particular files having to do with that team or that channel. Couple things that you can do with this. One, you can open it, you can copy it, you can download it if you want to adjust it. But let's say I needed to just open it and take a look at it. Maybe I need to edit it. So if I click on open, it'll allow me to open it in Word Online. It'll allow me to open it in Word, or it'll allow me to just open it in Teams to take a look at it. So we're going to open it in Teams. It actually opens a copy of Word. I can come down through here. I can edit it if I need to. I can comment it. I can actually pull it into a conversation over here. So if you're editing a document with a couple of other people, you can start a conversation directly around the document. Again, there's that ... things we can do with it, right? So we can open it up in a desktop app if we're not real excited about the way that we see it inside of Teams. If we want some additional ribbons or things to be able to work with the document a little bit better, opening it up in the desktop app is a little more helpful. And then once we're done, we can close it. Now, the important part of all of that, one, it gives you the ability to work with other people inside of Teams with whatever documents that you're doing. That's great. If you need to then send those documents to somebody else, but don't necessarily want to download the document, send it out, do whatever you would normally do in the course of a day. So you would download it, you'd have a copy of it, you'd open up Outlook, you'd attach it to an email, and you'd send it out, right? What you can do is open it in SharePoint. Hang on for just a moment because that is opening up inside of a browser for me. So I'm going to bring that over here. I'm going to close that. Yeah, remove. Once it is opened in SharePoint, I have the ability to do other things with it. Again, we have that ... So what can I do with it? Oh, I can make a copy of the link. Well, if I make a copy of that link, it actually links the document for me. I can make a copy of that document and then send it out to an external person as well, which means that I'm not sending the entire document. I'm just sending a link to the document to somebody. So we're not sending a copy of a copy of a copy back and forth all the time. So you have that ability to do that. And again, that's if you open it in SharePoint. So that's what that does for you. All right, what am I missing here? I think I've hit on everything that I needed to show you as far as documents go. A couple other things that you can do here with your tabs. And again, we talked about some of this stuff briefly, and I know we have set a lot of this up for the codes department in there already. You do have the ability to build planners inside of here. PDFs, if you have specific things in PDFs, especially for instructions for how to do things, you can link those in or put them up as a tab to do that. If you have a document like the document that I have down here, and you know that that's something that you're going to reference all the time, you can actually make a tab out of it instead of keeping it in your files. So whichever makes more sense for you. Like I said, if it's something that you're using constantly or referring back to, it might make more sense as a tab. So it's there at a glance instead of having to dig through your files for it. You have the ability to bring in specific websites as well. So if you know that you're referencing things fairly frequently, if you click on the website, it'll make that website a tab. It's going to ask you for the link to the website There it is. You paste your link there, creates the tab for you. And then, is there anything else I need to show you? I think that's really about it for tabs. Questions so far?
Can you go over, did you go over SharePoint at all, or did I miss that?
I didn't go into SharePoint in depth. I was going to do that next week, but I
Oh.
certainly can. What would you like me to hit on?
Just like the basic functionality of it and how it would be helpful to the team.
So SharePoint, when we talk about how it functions, what it does, why we use it, you guys are used to the G Drive, right? That's where all of your shared file storage is.
Mm-hmm.
I think of SharePoint the same way as the G Drive. So that's your shared file storage. We don't have a ton placed into there at the moment because once we move it from the G Drive, it actually has to move out of the G Drive to get pushed into SharePoint. So it can't exist in two places at once. So that said, doesn't mean that you can't put things there. It just means that I can't necessarily have them in two places at once. So as you guys are creating new things, there's no reason why they can't go into SharePoint unless you actually need them on the G Drive as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
okay.
no, go ahead.
What's the difference between Files and Team and SharePoint? Because they're
Perfect.
both folders or both locations, aren't they accessible by staff?
They are. So all of the files or all of the locations are accessible as far as that goes. So in this case, if I'm looking at the training team, right, everybody that is available to the team sees everything inside of the training team. So they see the general conversations, they see the connector for Bing, they see the questions, anything that we would put in the post, they would see anything they put in the files, they see all of that.
Mm-hmm.
They also see everything that they put into SharePoint inside of this particular team. So this is one of those, I need a picture for this because it would make more sense with a picture, but the files itself, it just makes a SharePoint location for the files.
Mm-hmm.
So if I open up SharePoint, again, let me bring back my window here, because it opens it up in a browser window. Make that just a little bit smaller so that you can see it. So inside of here, you're seeing my training SharePoint group that it created on the fly when I created that team. It shows me my documents that are available. If there's anything else in here that I would have available to me inside of SharePoint, again, at this point I don't because I haven't created a ton of anything. Oh, and it's telling me I have my webinar due today. Yeah, we're already doing that, thanks. I can then, upload stuff to here. I can, download information from here. Is there a big difference between files and SharePoint? Not really. It's the same location per se. What you can do with the files is a little bit different inside of SharePoint.
Okay.
So if I needed to keep everything inside of the team, I'm going to keep them in files, and that's where I'm going to work with them. If I need to get something out and share it with the outside world, I'm going to hop into SharePoint and create the ability to share.
Okay. So it's portability is the difference.
Portability is the difference. That's exactly right. So if we're talking about files, we're talking about just inside that team. And if I'm talking about SharePoint, I'm talking about the ability, doesn't have to be, but I'm talking about the ability to be able to share it outside of the organization.
Okay, got it.
All right.
In the SharePoint files, that would be the big difference between saving documents here and saving them in the G Drive.
Correct. So what that does, SharePoint itself gives you the ability to put things into the cloud and share them with the rest of the organization in some way. Or again, in this case, it's just the team because we're talking about the SharePoint site for this particular team. Does that make sense?
We don't have access to the G Drive from home.
That's correct. So
I'm thinking about like more permanent document storage.
Yes. So more permanent document storage is absolutely a conversation we all need to have at this point, because eventually the plan was to get everything from the G Drive up to SharePoint. We haven't started that process yet, but it looks like we are probably going to have to before too long. So
You don't want to just keep using the WP for everything?
could we not? That would be fantastic.
Works
I've been
perfect.
trying to get away from that for 10 years.
I know.
You still like it.
I know you do. Stop liking it. Um,
Does WordPerfect even exist?
I think it still does in the
Does?
vast recesses of the internet somewhere. I
Oh.
haven't seen it for a while, but
Don, are you looking to add Y Drive too? Because I use
we
that
put a
now.
lot of, yeah.
well, I
Um,
mean, here's the thing, guys.
Yeah,
We
we can
can
set
we
later.
can move things whenever you're kind of ready to get that process going. So it's just a matter of when you say, you know what, we're not using things at the office anymore, so it would really be more helpful to have them into SharePoint. We can do that. I just need to know where to start, when to do it, and kind of basically make a roadmap of how we're going to get you guys into SharePoint and what files are going to move when.
I have old files in, the G drive.
I'm
but,
sure you do.
I also have new documents that I've been putting into the Y drive. So
yeah. Yep.
So
I
I guess-
use both.
I think the biggest question is maybe the Y drive. I know we created that one.
Just
geez,
for
not
CET.
even right, not even 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Would it make sense to get that up into SharePoint for you guys?
Yeah, I think
A
that
lot
would
of
be
a lot of my stuff's in there now. So
Yeah.
yeah, not all of my stuff, but a lot.
right. Yeah.
The things that would make sense for you guys to have available to you?
Yeah.
It'd be great because then we could see plans online, except for we need to, when you pull it over, does it just copy and mimic what you had in the Y drive, or are you setting up a new file convention too?
I don't want to say it's a new file convention because it's just a new way of looking at it, but it is going to look a little bit different. So do you keep the same folder structure? You can, absolutely.
What about with those files that we don't have the software? Let's say if we're using a laptop from home.
So if you're using your laptop from home and you don't have the full GIS suite on it to be able to open up things like that, is that where we're going?
Yeah, or any type of other software. Is it going to be viewable or?
I think it's going to depend on the file. So depending on whether or not you have a viewer for that particular file, we can, look at things, on a case-by-case basis. Excuse me, as far as that goes. But then it would just be a matter of, hey, you know what, I need GIS put on my machine. Can we do that? Yeah, sure, we can do that. Can you drop it off at the township? We'll pick it up, we'll put it on. You can come back, pick it up, and go from there. So it's going to be a little bit of the shell game of getting things accomplished. But yeah, we can definitely do that.
Okay.
Go on a couple other questions on the,
Yeah, absolutely.
when the way we use the email now in Outlook, everything's archived somewhere. You can go back weeks or months later and get a sent or received email.
Yep.
If you use the messaging in Teams, is it saved sort of the same way, some searchable format?
It is. It's saved in a searchable format. Things do not get moved. They get archived the same way. So that, they'll roll off. I say roll off, but they're basically just rolling off to an archive. So yeah, you can keep searching on them, and they're there. They're a record at that point in the conversation.
But it doesn't go to, it's not in Outlook, it stays in Teams.
It stays in the cloud, in Teams, yes.
And for the scheduling assistant in Teams, I know the way we have it now, we also have the rooms available.
Yep.
Well, do they have to be added to the team to make it work? Does it go to Outlook?
I don't have rooms in mind, so I don't know for sure. You guys would have to check that. I think the location will show up as long as we can search them like with an @ like if I say @ Gorgas Hall, I think we can do it that way.
And
I don't-
Can you
but I
only
don't know for
invite,
sure.
when the scheduling assistant, can you only invite people that are part of the team, or can you go outside the team?
You can go outside the team, I believe, for meetings, but if you have to, you can always invite somebody to the team and then invite them to the meeting if you need to do that as well. So if you're looking at, contractors or us or whatever, yeah, absolutely. Just add people to the team and add them to a meeting.
Hey, Don, I tried to make a team. This was, I think, like last week.
Mhm.
with outside participants, and it wouldn't find their emails. And I know I had their emails in there. Like when I typed it in, the whole email address, it was like grayed out. Like it wouldn't let me add them. Is there something different you're supposed to do for outside?
I will actually check the admin console for you because there are a couple of check boxes that need to get turned on for that to happen.
Okay, all right.
So let me double check that.
Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was Isaac or Noah that emailed me last week or the week before about, because I was trying to enter in zoning hearing board members and planning commission members that are outside. So he gave me the directions. I just haven't had a chance to do it. So I can forward that email to Aaron, but they should receive a notification that they were added to a team, and then they have to accept it. So then they should be able to see it according to Isaac.
That's correct, but I will double check your admin console just to make sure that that is correct. You guys saw me add Dan into the team earlier, right?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. You just start typing in somebody's email address, add them. It's going to ask you, if you want to actually add them in, you say yes, and away you go. So that's what it looks like from your end. And yeah, then they get an email that says, hey, you've been added to this particular team. Click here to accept, essentially. And that's all there is to it. If they're not familiar with Teams, it might be a little wonky. And the other thing is not everybody has Office 365. So I would absolutely check ahead of time to see, one, if they're familiar with Teams, but two, if they have a subscription to Office 365. So all of the features for Teams are not available on the free version, just as an FYI.
I'm thinking some of the older members are not going to have it.
Yeah.
that are just township residents that are on the board.
Exactly. So if you need to meet with them, what I would suggest you do, are you all familiar with Zoom at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Not really, but
Getting there.
yeah, well, we will today.
Yeah, exactly. Zoom is what we're using today. It's what you guys connected into. There is a free option for Zoom as long as your meetings are 40 minutes or less. You can have up to 100 attendees inside of your Zoom meetings. So you have that available to you as well. So if you need to meet with somebody face-to-face, share a screen, that kind of thing, you can do that. So it'd just be a matter of, if they're an older member or whatever, it might be easier just to send them the information. And if you need to meet with them, by all means, do a Zoom meeting. They have the information in front of them from their email, and then you can do it that way till things get back to normal.
Right.
What other questions do you guys have?
I saw in there's like the post, I guess, in the file, and then the wiki.
Yep.
What do you use a wiki for? I mean, I know there's like people use them, I feel like 10 years ago, but what do you use it for now?
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like in here too. I think they just put it in as a default. It's been in there for as long as Teams has been around. So whether or not you guys use them, you certainly don't have to. It's just there by a default setting. So you can remove it if you want to.
Oh, okay.
It's literally a default setting. That's it. Some people use them for, like, if you have, standards that you have to follow for specific things. So if you set up a team, maybe to do something very specific, and inside of there you have, your standard operating procedures, you could put those in your wiki. So people follow the exact same steps every time they do whatever it is they're doing.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, there is a purpose for it. It's just not everybody's going to use the team for that particular purpose.
And then I guess I have a hard time understanding channels. Like, how do you decide what's a channel? Do you start like and it's not a new conversation. It looks like you can do that with the subject within like a general kind of thread.
Like,
but how do you? Yeah.
So let me show you ours. There's ours, right? So we have a bunch of different channels, and it's all the information that we think is broken out from different things. So I wouldn't necessarily want to talk about security things in my general tab, or I maybe don't want to talk about tech news in general. But there are very specific things that I want to be able to see in there. Or if I have things going on in the lab, like Connor's prepping equipment for us, occasionally something doesn't go right. So he always asks us questions in the lab channel. So I think it's discussions, what things make sense to break into different channels for you. Maybe you have 2 channels. Maybe you have 400 of them. It's just all a matter of what makes sense for you.
So is that easier than making like a whole new team than to have just that other kind of conversation? It's easier if it's the same people.
I think if you have, the team itself is the work group. So depending on who needs to be a part of that work group, that would depend on, the channels that you have inside of there. So the same conversation that you're going to have about, department head meetings is not something that you're going to have necessarily in a, let's say a, board of commissioners agenda team, right?
Okay.
Completely different conversations that would go on in both of those. So the people that are in the team itself will drive some of the conversation topics. And that kind of drives what channels are in that particular team.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. What other questions do you guys have?
Can't think of anything right now.
Okay, well, start using it. Play around with it a little bit. You guys know what my email address is. You can always add me into a team and, pester me that way too. So whatever makes sense for you guys. That's pretty much all I can tell you to do is, work with it. Everybody's going to use Teams a little bit differently. I work out of it all day, every day. I use my files from inside of here. I post my files inside of here. Pretty much everything I do during the day, it either starts or ends in Teams. That's just how I work. Again, how you use it's going to be a little bit different. There are some things that, the guys do with it that I don't. There are some things that I do with it that the guys don't. So it's kind of like any other Microsoft product. It functions differently for different people, just a matter of making it yours and go with it from there. I will probably get in touch with Aaron and Dan in the next couple of days to talk about the Y Drive and what you guys want to do with it and what parts of it we can move to SharePoint, and we can kind of start there and get you guys a little more functional in the cloud.
Right.
Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys need anything else, again, reach out via email. You guys know my number. I'm actually at Dave's extension, by the way. So our normal office number, and he's extension 101. You can get either one of us there. Or for those of you that have my cell number, by all means, call there too. So that's pretty much it. Next week, I'm going to do a deeper dive into SharePoint, show you how to get that functionality working. Hopefully, we can get some of your files in there by then, and we'll kind of roll from there. All right?
Great.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks
right.
again.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay healthy.
You too.
You too. Stay safe.